Hello, everyone. Good evening and welcome to SC Code's live stream History Month event. We are so excited to be with you all this evening for a very special edition of what is usually our Mentor Mondays, which today is going to be a focus on powerful women in tech. And I am just thrilled to bring our speaker to you this evening. But before we do that, hello again from SC Codes. For those of you who don't know, SC Codes is a free platform where, sorry about that, where residents in South Carolina can access our totally free platform to gain skills in coding, as well as connect with industry experts to help you navigate coding as a new career, as a first career, as a hobby, as an interest. So we are so excited to, again, be with you this evening and focus on women in tech for Women's History Month. So happy International Women's Day to all of the women out there. We are spending this month at SC Codes highlighting the voices of women and amplifying the voices of women who are in tech while making a very conscious effort to reach out to women and show them that you can be in this field as well. And there are so many opportunities for women to not only get into tech, but to excel in the tech industry. And we are going to focus on someone who has done that very thing this evening. Miss Janice Roberts is our speaker for this evening. And I say speaker, but we're definitely going to have a very candid conversation and hopefully dig into all of the insights she has for us as a woman who has really climbed the ranks in tech. So as a quick introduction for her before we turn it over and get to learn more about her, Miss Janice Roberts is a native of Columbia, South Carolina, and currently resides actually in Marietta, Georgia, which is a suburb of Atlanta, with her husband, Jesse Roberts. Roberts has spent over 30 years as a professional in the telecommunications industry, most recently serving as vice president at Cox Communications in Atlanta, where she managed all of the residential and Cox business field operations nationwide, including regional back office centers and operations support at the company's headquarters in Atlanta. Prior to joining Cox, Roberts was a partner in Accenture in their communication and high technology practice consulting with Fortune 100 businesses, to help transform their networks, operations, and information technology. She began her career at AT&T, which is formerly Bell South, as an engineer and worked in various roles and increasing responsibilities to include senior engineer, staff manager, and area manager of Bell South Business Systems. Roberts graduated from Clemson University with a BS degree in civil engineering and received her MBA degree in marketing from Kennesaw State University. She is president of the Atlanta branch of the National Association of University Women and is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. She's also a member of the National Black MBA Association. Roberts enjoys mentoring, especially women in tech, tutoring, supporting STEM systems, helping others with financial literacy, and more. On a personal note, she is a wonderful piano player, writes her own music, and enjoys golfing now that she is retired, and a huge congratulations to her for that. So I am so excited to introduce you again to our speaker tonight, Miss Janice Roberts. Hello, Ms. Roberts, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Thank you so much, Morgan, for that heartfelt introduction. And I am so glad that I'm here today to be able to participate in this forum. I think it's exactly forums like this that are meaningful. And as we move through life in our careers, whether it's from school all the way through college and subsequently the connections that we make with others, that's what makes it difference in how we are able to achieve our aspirations. So happy to be here.
Thank you so much. And again, a huge happy Women's Day to you. It's women like you that we look up to and aspire to be and stand on the shoulders of. So I'm really excited to dive into the conversation today. So with that, I would love if we could just start with learning a little bit more about you. I know I read your bio, which very high level highlights all the successes that you have had, but I'd love to learn a little bit more about your background, just experiences, professional and personal, that really sparked your interest in tech.
So that's a very good question, Morgan. So the first thing that I'd like to say is, even as a young child from the elementary and middle school years, I really enjoyed math. Math was the thing that really got me passionate. And I can recall having a seventh grade teacher who made math not only fun, but challenging. And it was from that point that I realized that I knew I was going to do something that was related to math, but I wasn't quite sure what it would be. But by the time I got to high school, we had a career day. I believe I may have been a sophomore or junior in high school. And at the time, it was AT&T, which was formerly Bell South. And before that, it was Southern Bell. They actually sent some female engineers to our high school for career day. And at this time, imagine this, we didn't have calculators and computers as you know them now, but they introduced me to the idea of majoring in engineering. And so it was at that point, that was the pivotal point where I decided, okay, I love math. They told me that I can have a career and be successful in a career if I was good in math. And so from there, I went off to Clemson to major in civil engineering.
That is fantastic. And I love so many times when we dig into like, how did you get started, or what interests you? Teachers are like at the root of that story. So I think it's another career to shout out, that women generally are in teaching and generally making a difference in that way from so early on. So that's so exciting. So diving into your professional experience, can you walk us through, you talked about graduating from Clemson, so go Tigers, walking us through college graduation to your most recent role from which you recently retired, but kind of what that trajectory was like and some experiences there, especially as a woman.
Yes, so thank you. It was definitely a long road. So over 30 years is quite a bit of time. But when I left Clemson, I hired on, as I mentioned, with Bell South, which is, now AT&T, and I hired on as an outside plant engineer. And in that role, I was responsible for designing networks that go into the neighborhoods or to businesses and to the endpoint customer. And over time, in that particular role, I noticed that there were other opportunities on the technology front. For instance, when I started working, we were doing drafting manually. We did not have computer-aided drafting systems. We did not have a lot of systems to automate our business processes. But we were at a point where it was a transition where technology was becoming cheaper and we were beginning to get more applications. And so I made the pivot from engineering to a staff role, and I supported the implementation of a number of applications that we use to automate the design process of the network, as well as to run economic studies, et cetera. So that was really a triangulation point from being an outside plant engineer to then going to staff and then going over to help with the information technology and implementing systems to the very engineers who were doing jobs that I had done prior. So once I'd done that for a while, you notice in my background that I mentioned that I have an MBA in marketing. Well, I decided to go back to graduate school to get a degree in marketing. And many people ask, well, why would you go to marketing and move away from engineering? But really, the impetus behind that was I had my eyes set on a role in the Bell South Business Systems organization, which is a technology group, but they sold technical solutions to business customers. And so I wanted to understand the marketing apparatus and all the elements that go into selling to customers, et cetera. And so I got that MBA in marketing, but I was still working at a technical role and in technology. In fact, I became a service manager and I was supporting large customers with their technical networks in that role. And then I decided, okay, I'm gonna try something different. I went into consulting. At the time, it was Anderson Consulting and it became Accenture, which is one of the top consultancies now. And at Accenture, I got the opportunity to work across a number of different companies. And of course, it's a technology company, but it's a strategy and management consulting company as well. So it afforded me the opportunity to be on the front end of technology evolution. And so I was very pleased that I was able to work with a number of clients to introduce new technologies. And one example I'll give is barcode inventory. A lot of us, when we look at the different codes that we scan and barcodes in the grocery store, well, back in the day when I started, a lot of that was manual, but I was involved with the development and implementation of a barcode management system back in the day. And I worked with Accenture on a number of technology initiatives. So I'm going to pause there, see if you have any other questions about that part before I tell you about my last part, which is how I ended my career.
I don't, but I think it's important to note and relevant for the learners on our platform specifically, because we are like aiding their tool belt with a specific skill, right, in coding. But I think your story really highlights that you can go in with a skill set and really grow that career to management or overseeing different projects or working in a different space of the same industry. So I think it's super relevant for our listeners right now as they come in and looking for skills specifically, but knowing that those skills could really propel you to a lifelong career in different pockets in the industry. So that's fantastic. I'm ready to hear more.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct with that. In fact, when I decided to leave college in civil engineering, I knew when I was designing the network that that was not going to be the end all be all for me, but it was a toehold, so to speak, to get into other areas. And as you work on projects and you work with others and you hear about new initiatives that are being rolled out, many times there are opportunities to step up and take on different jobs that may not necessarily be your primary skill, but it may be something that you can expand your skill set with. And so me going from engineering to information technology, it's not a one for one where, you're taking your engineering principles. It was tough coding. That was not necessarily my forte, but my forte was understanding, why are we coding in the first place? What business problems are we trying to solve with it? And how can we build winning business cases to prove in the technology? So there's so many different roles that happen around technology, and coding is a good entry point, or it could be a midpoint, or if you just love doing it, it could be a career.
That's fantastic. That's so fantastic. I wonder also too, and I know it's getting a bit off of our path, but just your experience with coders during your career, and just some moments that may stick out for you there, and then maybe particularly if there have been any women coders who have stuck out to you, and if not, that's definitely why we're addressing some of these conversations today, that we need more women in that field. But would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I've worked with a number of women and men and who have been developers and coded and done fantastic jobs. One of the things that I like to say is that many times when someone majors in computer science, or they get, a tech degree, or they do incremental learning so that they can build the skill, they may actually start out in a role where they're testing software and not necessarily developing software. And what I can tell you is that I have run into some of the best testers ever that are women, because they find everything that's wrong. And so you want to be able to find the bugs and debug the programs before you actually roll them out. And so those are very important roles. I've also worked with women who have innovated solutions. My background, once I became a partner at Accenture, I was responsible for looking for opportunities to sell into clients. And we would come up with solutions based on business problems that we were trying to solve for the client. Well, sometimes the solutions didn't exist yet. It's not cookie cutter. You're tailoring solutions to whatever your client's needs are. And I had this one woman, and she's now a senior level person at Accenture who worked for me. And she was fantastic. She actually started as a software developer at Accenture, and she's moved her way all the way up to what would be the equivalent of a partner now. But she developed with her team an automated solution that actually met the client's needs, and it was right on par with what we had envisioned for the solution. So there are so many different roles that women can play in technology, starting from coding, testing, business requirements, definition. That's sitting down with the client and consulting with your internal business customer about what is it that you want? What do you need? How do you want the screen to look? What color radio button do you want? All of those things are part of the process.
Awesome. Awesome. Love that. So thinking of women and knowing that that is our focus of this month and our focus in terms of highlighting speakers and features for this month, can you talk about some of the struggles of women in the tech space and what have been some of your experiences with those struggles in this male-dominated field?
Well, you raise a good point there, Morgan. And first, women are still underrepresented in the technology space. I believe when I looked at some statistics from 2020, of the US tech jobs, women are in less than 25% of those. Doesn't mean that women can't do the jobs or are not capable of coding, etc. But what we found is that it starts early in elementary school and middle school. Yes. When women pivot away from math and the sciences, they're not as interested in them. But what I can say is that the challenge with it being not all, but male dominated, is that you're not getting a diverse perspective around the problems that you're trying to solve. Mm-hmm. And sometimes having women in the mix, it just gives a different angle to how you would address a problem. Now, I've seen it so many times. In terms of the challenges, though, it can be challenging, and I had my challenges over the years. And the principal challenge that I found when working with a group of men, number one, I was the only woman most times. And number two, when you would sometimes I would sometimes put an idea out, that idea may not have floated in the room or may just fell flat. Mm-hmm. But within minutes, a male could have restated the same thing, and then it took on credence. And so what that means is that sometimes our voices are muted in an environment that's male dominated. And what it takes is tenacity, but it also takes a situation where we can feel comfortable amplifying our own voice. And that means engaging with other men who can actually mentor you or share insights with you outside of the meeting, etc. And last point I'd say on that is that I've had just as many men as women to mentor me throughout my career. Mm-hmm. And it's been fantastic. I've had, men to sort of sponsor me for promotions, new opportunities, speak on my behalf, doing performance appraisal reviews. So it goes without saying that much of what we can achieve on the job, a lot of it is tied to what you're capable of and your performance and your outlook, but a lot of it is tied to the relationships that you build as well.
That is such a great point. And I think a lot of times when we have these conversations that are focused on the women's perspective, we come at it from a harsh angle and not from a collaborative effort where we talk about how men can serve as allies in the workplace for us and not necessarily a competition between the two, but working together as the team. So I love that you bring up that point. And that feeds actually into my next question about mentorship, which you have answered that men and women have served as mentors for you. And I'm wondering about a specific time that a woman or even man, honestly, has served as a mentor and how it's impacted you positively.
Well, there is an example that comes to mind, and this is, I guess I was I'm thinking in my late 20s, maybe early 30s. I think late 20s is, late 20s because it was in the late 80s. But I had a female who was a senior level person in the organization who said, I think it's time for you to take another role. And I thought, wow, well, I've only been in this job 18 months. Why would I want to do that? Because I felt like I wasn't ready for this next role. And this person had been mentoring me, but then shifted and not became only a mentor, but a sponsor. And I want people to understand there's a difference between someone who's mentoring you versus someone who's sponsoring you. A mentor will listen to what's going on and try to give you objective feedback and may not necessarily have a stake in your career aspirations and success. A sponsor, however, is trying to remove roadblocks and to identify specific jobs that you may be good in and help you navigate that pathway and see you land in those positions. So this particular woman, she said, no, you're ready. She says, you don't have to know 100% of what it takes to do the job, to be in the job. You're going to have a learning curve in the job. I think you're ready. And that was like a light bulb for me. And it became something that I use later to mentor others and to sponsor others. And in general, men will say they're ready when they may have 50% of the skill set required. We're looking for 100% of it as women,
yes.
Whereas that's not necessarily the case. And so that just stuck with me. And that, I believe, having that support and having someone to have confidence in me and something that she saw in me that perhaps I didn't see myself, let me know, okay, I can do that. And so it served me well when I decided to change companies. Okay, I'm going to leave Bell South and go to Accenture. It was scary, but I did. And then leave Accenture and go to Cox Communications. It was scary too, but I did. So
that is incredible. And I feel like today, especially across social media platforms and everywhere where we're amplifying these voices, you hear about women having each other's backs and supporting each other in the workplace and helping to amplify the skills and skill sets of each other. And that's right on track with what I wanted to dive into next is how do we serve as that support for women, especially in the tech field, of course, but just in the workplace in general. How do we support each other and not compete with each other, although we are competing in some ways, if that makes sense?
Yes, and I think I mentioned earlier the importance of establishing relationships on the job. So first and foremost, I think women in general are more apt to establish relationships. We are more open, if you will, with our communications in general and not as closed at the vest, so to speak. However, you're right. Sometimes it can be perceived as competitive and sometimes that's okay. I would say look for the teaming opportunities and what skill does that woman who sits next to me have that I don't, and how can I round out my skill set, and what skill set I may have that the other person does not, and how can we support each other. But fundamentally, as human beings, we all need to feel connected to something. And on jobs, to be satisfied, we have to feel connected to our work. We have to feel that the work that we do matters and that we matter. And so by engaging in these open, honest conversations with women or men, but mostly, whoever you're working with, there's nothing wrong with sitting down and having expectations conversations. This is, I'm not a morning person, okay? And I may say, I'm working with someone on the team. You're a morning person, I'm not. So if you could handle this part of the job until 9, and then I take on this part, after 9, just small things like that. But the having each other's back is another thing. Being open and honest means you have to be open for direct feedback. And sometimes it's not always good. It's not always positive to hear, but it's probably good for development. And I've had my share of aha moments when I've been told, well, this is how you're perceived by this group of people. And I'm astonished, like, really? And so, but it's something for you to learn about. And sometimes women can be the vehicle or the avenue to actually share that with you. One other thing before we move on, mentoring circles, coaching circles, mentoring relationships, all of those things are very important. What I've found is that when they're organic and natural, those relationships tend to work best for me, or they did work best for me. But if it's sort of contrived where someone magically matches you up with some random person, in the organization, it just didn't work as well for me. Now, it doesn't mean that it can't work for others, but I found it to be a little troubling for me. It just worked best when, I had something in common that we could talk about and go from there. So.
Very true, very true, and such good advice. As I feel like our culture is really supporting the idea of women supporting each other right now. So I think now is the time for us to harness that strength and really band together as women to take ourselves to the next level. Because the stats right now are just not in our favor. Business Insider reports, or latest reports, that only 8% or women in leadership, 8%, women who are considered executives, 8%. And I just, if we could just pause for a second at that statistic, the number of executives in the country, only 8% are women. That is horrifying and leaves so much work to do. But I feel like as far as our conversation, it's a time to really amplify your voice and highlight you and celebrate you for what an accomplishment your career has been, and a testament to the work and work ethic that you have. So I want to flip back to you as a professional and dig a little bit deeper into just your proudest moment as a woman in tech, as a woman professionally. What, now that you are retired, which congratulations again, what do you look back on and say, that was amazing that I did that?
Well, there are lots of achievements, from a technical standpoint, from a business standpoint, from a first standpoint, the first to do this, the first to roll out this, or to get an award for that. But honestly, for me, the thing that has been most impactful for me, and the thing that I am proudest of, is the fact that I did the work and spent the time investing in others, mentoring, coaching, sponsoring. And now what I see is that some of the very folks, like the woman I mentioned earlier, who was on my team, who's now made it to the partner equivalent level, but there are others. There are so many others. So helping to guide people and help them navigate their career paths, that has just been tremendous, because in essence, they're now doing the same thing. And that essentially is a legacy. Yeah. And not many people are going to remember about that barcode inventory system that I told you about, because it's probably been retired by now.
Yeah.
But they will remember about, John, right, and Joe and Jill and all the others who I helped navigate their careers, and then they're now doing the same thing. So I would have to say it's the impact on people. And at the end of the day, when we code, when we develop solutions, we're still in the people business.
Yes.
It's all about making lives easier for people, providing solutions that enable them to live, work, play in a way that's meaningful and easier. And so that's how I would sort of end cap that.
That's wonderful. And I feel like that really speaks to your heart, first of all, as a professional, and also your desire to see change in the field, and for young girls to be able to see themselves, which is, again, the huge focus for us this month. So thank you, as a fellow woman, for leading the way for other girls. And in that same vein, as mentioned, the women on our platform are gaining, men too, but women on our platform are gaining skills as developers. A lot of them, it may be entry level. Some of them are career changers. Some of them are just really interested in coding and picking it up as a hobby. But as they gain these skills and build their toolkits and enter into the field, what's some advice that you can give them, relevant to them as women, but just in general as they step first day onto that job?
So, there are so many things, but I would say the first and foremost is to know that if you're there, you probably deserve to be there. You got the job, you're in the role. So own that. Own the fact that you're there and deserve to be there. The second thing is never, ever stop learning. As I think back on my career, technology changed so much, as I mentioned, manual processes to using automated systems to now using voice activated systems, things of that nature. But in addition to never stop learning, it's ask for help when you need it. And that's one of the challenges that I had as well, based on the family that I was raised in. My mom taught us to be very self-reliant. You don't really ask for anything. And so that was a mindset shift. I had to go through that. I'm not solving everything on my own. There is a team that's here to help. And I have never asked someone for help and they've refused on the job. Never ever. So ask for help. The other thing that I would say is with this technology, digital transformation that we're in the midst of, there are going to be opportunities galore. I mean, opportunities in every single industry. So if you have a passion for education or a passion for medicine or a passion for retail sales or a passion for banking, well, guess what? All roads lead to technology, because all of those industries rely heavily on technology to enable their businesses. And so if you can find the intersection point between your passions and technology, I think you'll be happy or happiest in the work that you do.
Wonderful, wonderful. And bringing it back home, you talked a lot about the tech industry and the tech industry growing. And as we serve South Carolina residents and therein women in South Carolina, can you think of anything or any opportunities that may be South Carolina specific, or just takeaways that may be South Carolina specific, or a connection that is South Carolina specific that you want to share with our platform?
Well, what I would share is that, and I did a little bit of research on South Carolina, you do have a number of technology companies and software companies in South Carolina. And I would imagine, because the way that the South Carolina economy is set up, that it's attractive for a lot of businesses to move there. I can remember when, I was in college, there wasn't a BMW plant up in the upstate. There wasn't. I mean, there wasn't, but they're there now. And guess what? Those plants use robotics that require, developers and coding to do a lot of that work. I would think even across all the industries that I mentioned, technology is transforming the way we do practically everything. So we're going into what I would call the connected home, or the Internet of Things. And this is where everything is connected to the internet, from your washer dryer to, your refrigerator, all those things. There are going to be huge opportunities in that area around the connected home. We've heard the federal government talk about infrastructure and how we need changes, plans that will implement changes to our infrastructure, the power grid and things of that nature. All of those things are powered by, no pun intended, technology. And so I think the opportunities are there. This SC codes, for instance, the fact that investment is being made to make this available, it speaks to the direction of enabling and getting a workforce ready to take on all these jobs and opportunities that are out there. So I know insurance is big in South Carolina with Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I'm not sure some of the others, but definitely there are opportunities there in technology. So
fantastic. Wonderful. We just appreciate being able to step inside of your brain for a moment and learn more about your journey specifically, but also pull out some ways that we can support women on our platform, and just women in general who are listening and interested in entering the field and growing once they're there. So I'd love to open the floor up for questions from our audience, from our viewers. But while we are waiting for those questions to come in, one more question that I actually thought about while we were chatting, and I don't know that we dug into enough, but can you talk about your two? I know Cox Communications is one, Accenture was one, but can you just briefly give us an overview of what those companies do, just for those who are in our platform who may not know?
Okay, so Accenture is a management consulting and technology company. And Accenture does business process outsourcing as well as IT outsourcing. They innovate various solutions in different industries, and their go-to-market is typically where they have various groups of employees who serve different industries. I happen to work in communications and high technology when I was there, which included telecommunications companies, companies like Microsoft, and what would be Google and companies of that nature now, but also companies in the cable industry. Cox Communications is similar to, I believe you may have Spectrum in South Carolina. I don't know if you have Comcast there or maybe some smaller cable companies, but Cox Communications is a division or subsidiary of Cox Enterprises. Cox Enterprises has a number of a number of companies, I'm sorry. And Cox Communications delivers, video, voice, data, home security services to customers and businesses. So that's what those companies do.
Thank you so much for that overview. And just looks like one additional question would be, we definitely spoke about being a woman, but wanted to dig deeper into being a woman of color and any experience that stands out there.
Well, that's an interesting one. So, I started a career a long time ago. And so being a woman of color, fortunately for me, when I started in the 80s, I was not the first woman of color as an outside plant engineer at Bell South. I think I was the second. And so I had the benefit of the first person who actually aided me and mentored me, and in fact is a very good friend until this day. And so there were challenges, but I cannot necessarily say that harmed me in any way because I was still able to achieve my career goals. And what it looks like is opportunity. Because you don't necessarily look like the person that's running the show, you may not necessarily get the opportunity. But it also could be because you don't have a relationship with the person that's making the decision, and the person doesn't really know you. And someone once said to me, well, if you're outside and you're going to pick up a softball game and you're coming up with teams, who are you going to pick to be on your team? You're going to pick the people that you played with before, the people that you know. And so overcoming that, and sometimes the way it looks, it may have looked as if it was race related, but I couldn't go to the intent at that level. But what I can tell you is that I'm certain there are opportunities that I missed, but at the same time, there are plenty of opportunities that I was able to run after and be successful with. So.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for allowing us to dig there. That is very helpful, I know. And I know that our platform attracts a diverse pool of women. So I know that perspective and lens is really appreciated. I just want to thank you again for joining us and sharing so much great information with us. I know that our learners appreciate it. I know that our community appreciates it. And as our video is viewed over and over and over again, I find so much comfort in knowing that a woman such as yourself and that voice is being shared throughout our communities and amplified. And we've done a very small part today to push the agenda of women forward. So thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you again for the invitation.
Absolutely. And I will signal to our crew, our very small crew, our tech crew, that I think we can wrap here and close out. But again, wanted to thank you so much for joining us and invite you back anytime to share on any topic related to tech, particularly for women, but your presence is definitely needed here and in this space, and we are grateful for it.
Well, thank you again for having me. And anytime you need my help, and if you need connections with other women that are in technology, I can give you the hookup there as well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And to all of our learners on our platform, friends in the community who are watching, thank you so much for joining us for another edition of Mentor Monday with a very special highlight, Women in Technology, and happy International Women's Day to all the women out there. Thank you for all that you're doing to push women forward.